Hey, so May has come to an end. It is the time of the month where I reflect on all of the board games I've been playing, new and old, but all new to me games, and talk a little bit about my favorite ones. So, first, a couple of updates. This month is the first month I've been doing live videos every week. I've been trying to do them Mondays at 8 p.m. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and I didn't get a video out, but I'm kind of doing a theme where before I publish a big video, I'm having a little discussion with my subscribers and viewers about my top 10 lists before I publish them. So if that's something that you like to participate in, make sure to come back next Monday at 8 p.m. I'm trying to make that consistent. I think it's going to take a little while before it becomes a regular pattern. But as always, you know the drill. You can subscribe, get notifications, and all that jazz. Anyway, I've played a little bit more than a dozen games this month. There are two games that I think I was most excited about. So I'll talk about those ones first, and then I did a few comparisons, trying to find my favorite out of a few different similar games. So the two totally new to me games that I really enjoyed and ended up buying my own copy. The first one is called Origins. And Origins, I really enjoy because it is a dice worker placement game. And I found out I really like dice worker placement. But what's cool about this game, oh, and by the way, it did not make it into my worker placement top 10 list because as I played it, I felt like it didn't have enough interaction. It's the kind of game where when you place your worker, that space is still available for other people to go. And I think in a lot of other worker placement games, when you place your worker, it should remove the space from anybody else. So in this one, there's not really competition for space, but there is competition for claiming the space at the right time. Anyway, that's why it wasn't on the top 10, but it totally could be if it wasn't for that criteria because the game is great. What you're doing is, let's see if I can have some good components here. There are some pretty good components to this game. I always get these nice little trays. You have, at the beginning of the game, your one little worker, I guess. He has a name. I think he's called the leader. And then you have these little platforms. And these platforms hold dice. Just like so. So you don't have dice in your own color, but you put them on these platforms. And then you use this to claim an action. So you put the little platform out there and you do one thing or another thing. And at the end of the round, everybody takes their dice back. And instead of rolling your dice as you normally would at the end of a round with dice worker placement games, you increase its value. So right now it's a 5. And if it was the end of the round, I would increase it to a 6. Now, as this goes by, round after round after round, your dice are always increasing in value. And so as they get better in value, they become more valuable for actions. But you can also retire those dice to use them for scoring purposes by putting them on your board. And so I really find this fascinating about the game because there's always this question of, okay, how long do I want to hold my, when can I get it so that my dice get used for scoring this or that or the other thing, or do I want to let my dice expire naturally? So eventually, after it gets to a 6, it's the most powerful it'll be, but then at the end of that round, it just goes down onto your board, and you don't get to use it for one of the scorings of the tiles that you're building. Anyway, that idea of dice getting more and more powerful every round and then using them for scoring during the game, I found that fascinating. So I think that's all I'm going to be able to say about that. In this one, I probably do a full-length review about it, but it's worth taking a look at. And an excellent, unique idea for working with dice. That was called Origins First Builders. Oh, and by the way, something else about the game that I think is very interesting is that thematically, it's about... it's a civilization building game. And in the game, the premise is that early civilizations get their technology from aliens. And so the dice placement spaces are these alien motherships, I guess. Really interesting idea, but thematically, hardly any of that comes through. It feels like a very abstract game almost. I mean, it's got some excellent artwork and cards and everything, but what I marvel at is that despite having a pretty weak theme, I really enjoyed it, which reminds me a lot of the next game I really enjoyed this month. I played the game Red Cathedral. This is one that I saw in Barnes & Noble. And if I hadn't seen it in Barnes & Noble, I probably wouldn't have checked it out. But I like going to bookstores and seeing what's on the shelves. And sometimes when something looks interesting enough, I take a closer look at it. This one you can try on Tabletopia. And it's another dice worker placement game, kind of. In this case, the dice are placed on the board, and it's a rondel. So if you're not familiar with the rondel mechanic, you're going around. Thank you for dropping by in the comments. By the way, if you're watching, if you want to participate in all, I will be watching the comments on the side there. So I've got Cryo back here. I will have to do a full-length review for Cryo sometime. I've put it on a lot of my lists, but yes, I get very excited about talking about Cryo. Anyway, I'm going to go back to what I was saying about Red Cathedral. This is a dice worker placement game, and in the game, the dice are on a rondel. And the rondel mechanic is you move around a rondel or a circular pathway, and you can't do some actions until you come around full circle. And so every die on the red rondel has a value, and the value on the die represents how far on the rondel it can move. This almost kind of reminds me of the mechanic in Five Tribes, because how far you can move is predetermined. You take your turn, you pick up a die, you move around the rondel. Where you land, you get to perform the action, and then all of the die that are in the space where you land get re-rolled. So you're kind of playing against luck here. You're looking at what you can do on your current turn, and you're also looking ahead at what you think might be available in future turns. But if you don't do it on your turn, there's a chance that all of the die on that space could be rolled, and then you might not be able to do what you're planning. So you kind of have to gamble against what other players are going to do as well. What I liked a couple of things about it. First of all, I liked that it was $27 on Amazon. It's such a small game, and its value. This was really affordable to me, and it's like, well, why not? I really enjoyed how many mechanics there are to think about. But again, this game felt really meaningless. I mean, it's about building a cathedral. The theme doesn't come through very powerfully in this game, but there's a lot to think about. So I've been reflecting on the kinds of games that I really like. I've really been talking a lot about Russian railroads lately. Again, that's another really abstract game, but many, many factors to consider in decision making. And I've been gravitating towards that a lot lately. So those are the two ones that I recommend most of all. I'll probably do more full-length reviews on each of them. Now, I did a few comparisons as well. In preparation for my list on top worker placement games, I was looking at some real dice worker placement games, namely Voyages of Marco Polo, Marco Polo 2, and Rivers of the Ganges. Now, all of those can be played on yukata.de, or the Marco Polo ones can be played on Board Game Arena. They are all dice worker placement games. I'm curious to know what other people think. I've seen River of the Ganges all over the place. I did not mention it in my top 10 list. I felt like it wasn't an authentic dice worker placement game. Personally, I feel like the game isn't cohesive enough. In Rivers of the Ganges, you're actually not placing the dice to perform the action. You're placing meeples, but then you're using dice as currency to spin towards the action. I didn't find that as compelling as Marco Polo. Marco Polo is like most classic dice worker placement game. Everybody has their own die and their own player color. They're basically trading resources. in order to satisfy objectives, in order to get points. Such a classic Euro. And that was the one I put on my list. But I played all three. Well, not that I haven't played Marco Polo before, but I wanted to play all three this month in order to compare them and see which one would make the list. My recommendation was Marco Polo, the original. Voyages and Marco Polo, which I've played the most. It happens to be the case. Now, I did one more comparison between two dinosaur-themed games. This was for the top 10 board games that a dad can play with his kids. The two games were Dinosaur Island and Dinogenics. If you've watched the top 10 videos a dad can play with the kids, the one that I put on the list was Dinogenics. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how that one won out. I did compare both very carefully. Here's the thing. This game was very interesting to me. I liked the way that it looked when it was all set up. I like thematically how much was going on, but mechanically, this game is a mess. It feels so scattered. There are so many mechanics to make everything work. You go from, in the beginning, you're doing dice drafting, and you're using the dice that you draft in order to, and you're using workers that you draft in order to get dinosaur blueprints and DNA. And then after that phase is over, you go into a market phase where everybody is drafting and paying for different cards that they can add to their dinosaur park. And then after that phase is over, you have another board, which is your player board, that you're using for worker placement. So you've got three very distinct mechanics and phases of the game. It's interesting because it's kind of fun in terms of how the story goes. It makes sense in thematically, and so that's why I liked the game originally. But then it feels like there's just so many pieces. Yes. So Dinosaur Island, I liked it thematically, but then somebody on my channel went to Dinogenics. Dinogenics is way stripped down. Instead of collecting dice in order to get different units for resources, like, it's the same idea, exactly the same idea of the game. You're trying to get DNA in order to build dinosaurs. But in Dinosaur Island, it's resource tracks. So you're increasing your DNA count on 6 different tracks, I think. I think there's 6 different tracks. And some of those DNA you can convert from one track to another track. In Dinogenics, it's just cards and set collection. So you've got a market of cards. You're trying to get sets of cards that match the dinosaur that you want to produce. So you need like 2 raptor cards in order to produce a raptor, or you need, I think it's 4 brontosaurus cards in order to produce a brontosaurus. But it's so much simpler. You have one board. You have one, I mean, there's multiple phases, but in terms of the actions, there's just a worker placement phase. Same kind of idea. You've got your own board, you've got tile placement, you're trying to place buildings, you're placing fences, you're putting dinosaurs in the fences, and then in both games you have a luck-based mechanic where you're using the result of a die to figure out if the dinosaurs go wild. I like Dinogenics much more. I thought it was a more elegant game, but here's the thing. In terms of cost, it's like $40 more than Dinosaur Island. So, if you are the kind of person who is looking at games and you are assessing games based on how elegant they are, I've got to talk about Cryo today. Man, if you're assessing games based on how elegant they are, you really got to go with Dinogenics. But if you're not willing to spend, $80, $90 for Dinogenics, Dinosaur Island is fine. You might not appreciate how complex the mechanics are, but it's thematically a really fun game. Now, thank you for those of you who are talking about Cryo. I'm totally going to jump into Cryo right now. I actually played Cryo this month, come to think of it. I brought it to my board game group, and we played it for the first time. Do I have it on the shelf? Oh, it might be in the bag on the top. I wish I could take it out. I don't see it. I'm going to get up high. This is my game bag that I take with me to board game nights. And I bet Cryo is still inside. Everyone's talking about Cryo. Why do I like Cryo so much? Okay. Bum, 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 bum. Solid worker placement game. Oh man, it's solid. Okay, so look at here we go. I'll take you through the narrative of what Cryo is all about. Here are some reasons why I love Cryo. Okay. This are the parts of the ship that has crash landed here. Now I've gone over what Cryo is all about so many times before. But here's what I like about it. It makes sense to me that each part of the ship has different technology that's on it. So this part of the ship stored all of the cryogenic freeze pods. That's why there are so many actions over here where you're retrieving people. This part of the ship is where all of the energy was. You can see the engines here. And this part of the ship is where you get energy and fuel for your spacecraft. This part of the ship is where all of the vehicles were stored. That's why the cards are available here. The board itself makes sense. All of the little pieces are broken. You've got little pieces of salvage that you can pick off of this. I like the game. One of the things I like about the game is that there are so many Euro-style games where you're just arbitrarily getting different goods, right? You're getting like 2 bricks and or stone or a wheat or something like that. And why is it brick? Why is it stone? It doesn't really matter. It could just be A's and B's and F's and 2 E's. You can trade that in and make a D. It's pretty meaningless. In Cryo, all of the pieces of the game and where they're located and how they're found makes sense for the story behind it. Then what you've got it is Cutthroat. Oh wait, World of Warcraft. Thanks. I've always been interested in it, hoping to grab it someday. Okay, check this out. There are 8 different cards. I'll pull out more than one of them. Okay, these are the vehicle cards in Cryo. And there's only 8 of them. You've got like I don't know, probably 50 cards in the deck or something. But only 8 different types. So in a lot of other games, so much dependency on luck, right? You're counting for a card to come out. The card just doesn't come out. It can be very, very frustrating. In this game, you have multiple copies of every single one. So you know you're going to get what you want eventually if you draw enough. Each card has 4 abilities. And every copy of the card is identical. They have the same abilities. You've got the ability that it gives you if you use its technology at the top of your board, its upgrade ability. You've got an objective on the side. You've got the vehicle's ability, and then you've got scrapping, what you can scrap the card for in order to gain resources. Thematically, every card, the objective, the upgrade, the vehicle, they're all tied together, which makes sense. I like that. And it gives you something to really aim for. You're getting a card and you're like, oh wow, if I use this card for the upgrade, it can be very, very, very helpful. But if I use this card for the scoring mechanic, it could be helpful too. The thing is, if you had that card twice, the upgrade and the scoring mechanic complement each other. So there's almost an element of set collection. You really do want to have cards that are the same so that you can use them for each type of ability. They combo very well. The card art, man. Okay, so here's the thing with the card art. It's not as fanciful as some other like space fantasy games, but it is very consistent across the entire game. The pieces, the aesthetic of the game is very consistent. And if artwork isn't going to be, gorgeous, I do appreciate it when it's consistent. Wait, I think the game would have had lots of strategies. There's so many strategies in this game. All right, well, anyway. Other thing, and I'm not going to spend all evening talking about Cryo, but this is the other thing I like about it. This is the player board. anytime player boards have ridges so that the pieces don't slide around, that's a huge plus for components. You've got the resource tracks, okay, that's fine. In this game, you're picking up these resource tiles and you're placing them on your board like this. They fit right in there. They don't slide around. Then, during the course of the game, you have these little pieces that you're moving around on the board, the drones. The drones go out, they perform an action. You've got 3 drones. Once all of your drones are out, or even earlier if you want to, you have to recall your drones. Your drones come back and they go right back on your board. And where you place them matters. If I put my drone here, it gets to perform that action. If I put it in the next one over, it gets to perform whatever action I've built from the tiles I placed there. So you're actually building out your board as you play the game. And if that isn't enough, I mean, that's a pretty intriguing mechanic right there. But here's what I really like. The order that you place the drones in has a big impact on what you do during the recall phase. I appreciate you commenting in the video. It's fun when it's interactive, right? Anyway, when you place the drone, the order matters. So you can actually set up some really cool combos. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to put it here to convert to energy, and then I'm going to put it here because I want to spend the energy to do this, and then I'm going to take the result from that in order to do this and draw the card and play the card, and boom. Like, you can make these really sick combos. And I've actually had games where I'm playing, and I'm sitting there, I take my turn, I pick my action, and, you know, it's not my turn anymore. Somebody else is going, and I sit there and realize, oh, no. Oh, shoot, I totally messed up. And you know those moments where you encounter where you're like, oh, I messed up so bad. I want to ask the opponents if I can take my move back, right? Like, I want to take my move back. So I was sitting there and playing with my friends. I'm like, oh, I want to take my move back. And I started thinking about what I was going to do on my turn because, you know, bad form to ask to take my move back. And I started realizing I could compensate for my screw up if I did a good combo on my player board. And when I realized the combo that would correct my mistake, this game rose again in my assessment of it. So that's at least 3 reasons why I think Cryo is one of the best games I've ever played. Thank you for participating on my video today. So to close things out, I did want to share some recommendations that came from some viewers. I recently did top 10 games that you can play, or a dad can play with his kids. 2 games came up that some people mentioned that I was like, those are excellent. I should have mentioned those games. I don't know if they would have placed in my top 10 or not, but they were very appropriate. The first game was Downforce. Now, I don't really like Downforce that much. It's a car racing game, but thematically, I think that's solid. The game is not hard to play. It is absolutely something you would want to play with your kids or your friends. Very easy to teach, but very interesting. The reason I don't like it so much, the reason it wouldn't have made my list is because I think it's a little too cutthroat. Basically, you're trying to race these cars and bet on them. The best way to win is by blocking your opponents. And it can be kind of frustrating when you get blocked. But then again, I put evolution on my list. So it's really just what is it you like? Do you want to have animals that eat each other or race cars that block each other? I thought it was an excellent recommendation. The other one that was dropped was Galaxy Trucker. Galaxy Trucker, I played that before I had kids. Actually, I guess my kids were babies. But I used to be the advisor of a high school board game club back when I was a teacher. And we would play Galaxy Trucker with the high school students. And it was very, very cool. It's kind of fallen off my radar in the last couple of years, but as a recommendation, excellent game for dad to play with his kids. Yeah. Okay, well, lastly, last update, I produced a new shirt. Check this one out. evolution of games. Backgammon, Go, checkers, chess, Parcheesi, modern Meeple. If you like it, I'll be sure to put a link in the description, but you can find all of my works of art and board game related merchandise, I guess, t-shirts and stuff, on my Shopify site. Thank you so much for dropping by. And I kind of went a little long today, but it was fun. It's fun. I liked the discussion. Take care. I will see you.